Imagine spending $800 on a brand new drone, taking it out for its maiden flight, and watching it nosedive straight into a lake. No warning, no error message, just gravity. That's exactly what happened to thousands of GoPro customers in the fall of 2016. And it set off a chain of events that would vaporize over $9 billion in market value. This isn't just a story about a bad product launch. It's a masterclass in what happens when a company mistakes its brand for a blank check and bets the entire house on a game it doesn't know how to play. Before GoPro was a Wall Street darling, it was a desperate idea born out of failure. Nick Woodman was 27 years old with two dead startups behind him. The first, an online gaming company called Funbug, had eaten through $4 million in venture capital before the dot-com bubble buried it. The second, a marketing platform, barely lasted long enough to register a domain name. Most people in that position take a corporate job and move on. Woodman took $235,000 from his parents and bought a one-way ticket to the Southern Hemisphere. He spent half a year surfing in Australia and Indonesia, and the entire time, one problem ate at him. He couldn't get decent footage of himself riding waves. Every camera he brought into the water died. Waterproof cases leaked, mounts broke. Even the expensive gear couldn't survive a real session. He came home with an idea that was almost embarrassingly simple: build a camera that's impossible to kill. His first prototype was a disposable 35mm film camera strapped to his wrist with a cut-up wetsuit and some industrial tape. It looked ridiculous, but it worked. Underwater, in wipeouts, in conditions that destroyed everything else on the market. He started selling them out of his parents' garage in California. Surf shops picked them up. Pro riders started asking for them by name. Revenue went from $150,000 to $350,000 in a single year, entirely through word of mouth. Then came the real inflection point: the GoPro Hero HD in 2009. For the first time, average people, not just pros, could shoot footage that looked cinematic. The camera survived motorcycle crashes, cliff dives, and deep sea excursions that would brick any smartphone. YouTube exploded with GoPro content. Skydivers became influencers overnight. Weekend mountain bikers were getting millions of views. GoPro hadn't just built a camera, they'd built a permission slip, a way for ordinary people to see themselves as extraordinary. By mid-2014, the company went public at $24 a share. 4 months later, the stock was trading at $98. Valuation, $10.2 billion. Woodman pulled down $284 million in compensation that year, making him the highest-paid CEO in America. Not bad for a guy whose first two companies imploded. Here's the thing about reaching a mountaintop: the only direction left is down, and by 2015, GoPro's executives could see the cliff edge. Smartphone cameras were getting scary good, scary fast. The iPhone 6s shot 4K video. Samsung flagships had optical image stabilization. The gap between action camera and the phone already in your pocket was shrinking every quarter. Internally, the projections were brutal. Camera sales alone couldn't justify a $10 billion valuation. Wall Street doesn't reward plateaus. Investors wanted growth curves, not flat lines. So Woodman made what he believed was the only logical move: GoPro would enter the drone market. The product was called Karma, and the pitch was compelling: an integrated drone and camera ecosystem that let everyday adventurers capture professional aerial footage. GoPro would own the platform and the lens. The whole experience, top to bottom. There was just one problem: a company called DJI, the Chinese manufacturer, had spent the better part of a decade becoming the undisputed king of consumer drones. Their Phantom line controlled roughly 70% of global sales. They had deep expertise in aerodynamics, battery management, GPS systems, and obstacle avoidance, none of which GoPro had ever touched. GoPro was essentially picking a fight with a specialist while being a tourist. Woodman poured over $200 million into Karma development. The company hired 600 new employees just for the drone division, ballooning headcount from around 1,000 to over 1,600. Engineers pulled marathon shifts trying to master technology that was completely foreign to them: flight dynamics, sensor fusion, power optimization. Manufacturing partnerships spanned 3 continents. Every dollar of profit was funneled into making this thing work. September 19, 2016. GoPro hosted a splashy press event at Lake Tahoe to unveil Karma. The reviews were fine, serviceable. The drone flew okay, but lacked the polish and advanced features DJI offered at comparable prices. Still, brand loyalty carried the day. About 2,500 units moved in the first few weeks. Then the videos started appearing online: a drone plunging into a lake during a family outing, another one dropping 40 feet onto a hiking trail. One after another, customers documented the same horrifying pattern: Karma drones flying normally, then abruptly losing power and falling like stones. No error codes, no graceful descent, just off. GoPro's engineering team tore the product apart looking for answers. Software checked out, power systems tested clean in the lab, GPS worked perfectly. Every individual subsystem passed inspection. The culprit turned out to be devastatingly subtle. The gimbal, the mechanism that stabilizes the camera during flight, had a mounting bracket that would gradually vibrate loose under real-world conditions. Specific combinations of wind, temperature, and flight maneuvers would cause it to disconnect from its housing. Once detached, it interfered with the drone's internal sensors, triggering a total system shutdown mid-air. The flaw had slipped through months of controlled testing because labs don't replicate the chaotic, unpredictable conditions of actual outdoor use. Reports kept coming, drones crashing near bystanders on beaches, units falling into crowds at outdoor events. The liability exposure was enormous. On November 8, 2016, barely 6 weeks after launch, Woodman pulled the plug. Full recall, every single unit, all 2,500 of them. The direct cost was roughly $4.5 million in refunds, shipping, and returns processing. That was pocket change next to the $200 million already sunk into development. But the real damage was something no balance sheet could capture. GoPro's entire identity was built on one promise. This gear survives anything. That's why people trusted it on cliff edges, in whitewater. Rapids strapped to their helmets at 120 miles per hour. The Karma recall didn't just kill a product, it cracked the foundation of the brand itself. What followed was ugly. January 2017. GoPro cut 270 jobs in the first wave. Entire teams were dissolved in conference room meetings that lasted minutes. People who had uprooted their families to work on Karma got termination notices by email. March 2017. Another 254 positions eliminated. By the time the layoffs were done, the company had gone from 1,650 employees to roughly 740. Nearly 1,000 people, engineers, marketers, salespeople, product managers, paid the price for a strategic gamble they had no part in making. Revenue cratered from $400 million a quarter to $240 million. The internal culture shifted from innovation to survival. Remaining employees described an atmosphere dominated by fear. Everyone wondering which department would be gutted next. Nobody took risks. Nobody pushed boundaries. The creative energy that had defined GoPro evaporated. Within 18 months, the company had lost 90% of its peak market value. If Karma was GoPro's wound, competitors were the salt. DJI launched the Mavic Pro right in the middle of GoPro's crisis. A foldable, portable drone at $999 that delivered everything Karma had promised. Stable flight, professional-grade footage, obstacle detection, collision avoidance. Features GoPro never managed to ship. DJI's consumer drone market share swelled to 85%, but DJI didn't stop there. They turned their crosshairs on action cameras, GoPro's home turf. The DJI Action series offered better stabilization, longer battery life, and stronger low-light performance at half the price. Then Insta360 came at the category from a completely different direction. Instead of competing on traditional specs, they pioneered 360-degree capture technology. Shoot everything, choose your angle later. It was a fundamentally different creative workflow that made conventional action cameras feel like relics. Pro athletes and content creators started defecting in waves. Snowboarders who built their careers on GoPro footage showed up in Insta360 ads. Reddit threads turned hostile. Why would anyone still buy a GoPro became a recurring post. Tech reviewers stopped recommending the brand entirely. GoPro's action camera market share slid from 47% in 2016 to 21% by 2019. The cultural relevance that had powered the brand, the sense that GoPro was action sports, evaporated. Today, GoPro is a shadow of what it was. The company that once employed over 1,600 people runs with fewer than 900. Its market cap hovers around $650 million, roughly 6% of its $10.2 billion peak. Recent quarterly revenue came in at $186 million, less than half of what the company pulled in at its height. Operating margins are negative. Cash burn continues. The Hero camera line still exists, but customer sentiment tells the story. Amazon reviews read like eulogies. Solid camera if this were 2016. Hard to justify when the DJI Action 4 does more for less. GoPro has tried pivoting. A subscription service called GoPro Plus charges $50 a year for cloud storage and editing tools. A mobile editing app called Quick competes for attention against CapCut and DaVinci Resolve, apps with larger teams, bigger budgets, and free tiers. Neither pivot has moved the needle. Brand awareness among teenagers, the demographic that should be driving future growth, sits at 23%. For Gen Z, GoPro is something their parents used before phone cameras got good enough. The stock has traded between $1 and $2 since spring of 2024. Analysts openly debate whether the company survives the next 5 years. GoPro's story isn't really about drones, it's about identity. Nick Woodman built a $10 billion company by understanding one audience deeply: people who do extreme things and want proof they did it. That clarity of purpose, build cameras that survive anything, created an entire product category and a cultural movement to go with it. The fatal error wasn't entering the drone market, it was believing that brand equity in one domain automatically transfers to another. GoPro's name meant indestructible camera. It didn't mean competent drone manufacturer. Those are completely different promises requiring completely different capabilities. The most dangerous moment for any company isn't when things are going badly. It's when things are going so well that you convince yourself you can't lose. That's when you stop respecting the thing that made you successful in the first place and start chasing markets that belong to someone else. GoPro had everything it needed to stay dominant. It just didn't want to be just a camera company anymore. And in reaching for something bigger, it lost what it already had. What do you think was GoPro's real turning point? Drop it in the comments. And if breakdowns like this are your thing, make sure you're subscribed. We've got more coming.